Good? Everybody ready? Hey, good afternoon. I'm Nim Kidd, the Chief of the Texas Division of Emergency Management, joined by Major General Tracy Norris, the Texas Adjutant General, and Toby Baker, the Executive Director of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Governor Abbott, obviously not with us today. He is at this moment convening an emergency meeting to address spikes in Texas energy bills. He's joined by several members of the Texas legislature, and look forward to hearing back from them after our press conference and after their meeting for their updates. I want to start quickly with a little bit of updates of our actions and efforts in support of local governments. Then we'll pass it off to the Adjutant General and the Commissioner or Executive Director Baker. Water distribution, bottled water distribution still seems to be our #1 priority. As of last night, we had ordered 9.9 million bottles of water through our federal partners. About 3 million of those were actually ordered yesterday afternoon. We've received 5.5 million bottles of water. 2.1 million have been distributed so far. We expect another million to be delivered today. We will keep that process going. We will continue to use every means of available transportation to get water out. We've also ordered 250,000 meals ready to eat, and we're ordering an additional 5 million that will be distributed. Those meals that we have are not in Texas, and they will get here. One of the reasons that they haven't been here already is because of the weather, frankly, and all the roads that have been closed. We'll continue to work with our local partners to provide their resource requests. I want to hit a few of the state agencies. Roads continue to improve. There's only a little over 1,000 road sections right now that are still affected. Department of Public Safety continues to patrol the roads. Texas Parks and Wildlife game wardens are out there still doing support to local governments. Texas Forest Service still clearing roads as well as patrolling roads and completed over 1,000 assistance operations. We still have 331 mass care or warming center locations open across the state. Those will stay open until people can safely get back in their home. And now that power is on, electricity should be returning. If there's still no running water in their home, we're going to continue to provide them a safe place to stay with access to safe water. Engineering Extension Services is really taking on a big role, supporting the warming centers, supporting hospitals with delivery of drinking water, coordinating refueling efforts for critical infrastructure generators, coordinating with the military department on aircraft support for drinking water distribution. The Texas A&M Task Force 1 and 2 were activated yesterday to support the Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base and airlifts to Galveston and Corpus Christi. The Department of State Health Services continue to supply oxygen cylinders to hospitals and still working with FEMA for additional oxygen to come into the state. I do think the oxygen situation will improve as power comes back on, or power is back on. Health and Human Services Commission continues to support drinking water distribution as well. Animal Health Commission supporting our ag industries. Emergency Medical Task Force is pushing additional supplies to EMS partners. And then Executive Director Baker will talk about TCEQ. I hope that today, after we give you this briefing, we'll actually do a lot of good question and answer and really want to do some education. We want to take time to talk about the details of the process, and so we'll stay here with you today as long as y'all want to stay here. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Adjutant General, Major General Norris.
Thank you, Chief Kidd. I'm going to quickly go over currently what we're doing and some of what we have done during the storm. Currently, we are flying aircraft and moving water and food to different places, and we're moving a lot quickly. When I say that, we have 2 C-130s out of Fort Worth. They're doing 4 flights a day, and we have 2 C-17s from the Air Force that are also doing 4 flights a day. And today, I talked to the Adjutant General of North Carolina Guard, and they're going to work to bring us another C-17 to continue moving water and food. We have 8 UH-60 Blackhawks that are flying. We have 4 are flying out of Austin and 4 are flying out of San Antonio. And then we have 4 CH-47 Chinooks that are flying. And 2 are flying out of Dallas and 2 are flying out of Austin. And once these flights are made, and water and food to the different areas as the requests are come in and prioritized through the State Operations Center, we're also working with local officials on the ground that if they need LMTVs or transportation assets, we're getting those transportation assets there where they can move those commodities off the aircraft. And right now we have over 100 aviators and maintenance out. Army and Air Guard are doing that mission. Before the storm, we had 7 winter weather packages, and that's Humvees, LMTVs, and wreckers. Everybody knows what a Humvee is. An LMTV is the light medium tactical vehicle with the flatbed, be able to move commodities around. They were on before the storm, and they worked in Austin, Abilene, Amarillo, Dallas, Fort Worth, Wichita Falls, Waco, and Taylor. And they did things. They supported DPS as far as pulling people off the road. Also, they were transporting key personnel. They were actually going to their home and getting them and taking them to their job. So it was very essential for them to be there. Also, they also transported people to warming centers, especially in Abilene and in Waco and Dallas. And those individuals were out before the storm. We also had soldiers pre-positioned for the warming centers. I know you've heard the governor and Chief Kidd talk about that. Over time, as things change, if we need to move them to distribution centers, that's what we're going to do. Let's see. Also, we have ground transportation assets that are going to be in each of the 6 TDM regions to support the locals. We have over 200 Humvees and LMTVs that are there, again, transport water and commodities wherever they need to go. We have general support personnel out there in Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. And those individuals are wherever we need them to go, they're going to be plugging in with the mission. And currently also our priority right now, based on TDM, is to move water and food. The food banks that we were running, it was mainly for the COVID mission, but all the food banks that we are in are running for that mission, as well as additional food banks are asking for help, which we are also going to fill that need. And our regional support centers that we had in support of COVID, those regional support centers now are pushing water to the hospitals. So, and with that, if you guys want to follow everything we're doing, because you got some great National Guard and State Guard Texans out there doing a lot of good things, you can follow us on Facebook, and it's Texas Military Department. You just go Facebook, put that, and then like it, and you will like it. And then follow, or you can follow us on Twitter, and it's at TX Military. So there's a lot of good stuff out there and showing the good Texans. Again, these are citizen soldiers, and so supporting Texas, that's one of the jobs that we do, and they're out there doing it. And currently, and we're still growing, but currently we have over 3,200 soldiers and airmen out there on mission right now. And we are continuing to add people to the mission. And actually what happens is soldiers will call their armory to see if they're needed. We don't always have to call them, but they do show up. So I think it's good.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, General. I want to start by just saying I understand the public is extremely frustrated right now. And I understand your frustration. My family, my dog, my 8 chickens are on day 4 without water at my house. So we are Texans too, and suffering through the same thing that you are. I also want to make sure the public knows that the local utilities who are out working on their water systems right now are working 24 hours a day to get your water back up and running. And we are right there with them, trying to provide as much assistance as we possibly can. So quick update on where we are with the numbers. Due to lack of power, frozen pipes, high use at certain times, we've seen the number of systems go up that are reporting issues. We're at 1,445, so that's gone up since yesterday. However, we've seen the total population being impacted by that go down to about 14.3 million, where it was 14.9 million yesterday. So it seems like last night we may have seen some stabilization in the water systems across the state. The number of the number of citizens who are experiencing no water or non-operational systems dropped from 352,000 to 156,000. So we've seen that almost cut in half, which is great news. We've also seen 64 boil water notices rescinded. So I think that my hope is we're going to be tracking this, that we've hit sort of the worst and we've stabilized, and now it's just sort of getting out of the hole that we're in. As the governor mentioned yesterday, we set up a phone bank. public water systems in the state of Texas, or any system that has more than 15 connections. So these aren't necessarily like the size of Houston or the size of Austin. These are rural connections and rural water systems as well. So we've set up a phone bank to assist with finding lab space and with technical questions. So if you are a public water system operator and you're trying to find your contracted lab is not open, you can call our phone bank and we will connect you with a lab where you can take your samples to lift your boil water notice. If you have a technical question, we will find the right answer for you as well. So that's up and running. It's up from 7 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night on a daily basis, and we will keep that, we will stand that up until it is not needed anymore. We currently have labs set up to run all weekend as well, so as the samples come in to lift these boil water notices, labs are ready to take them. We've worked closely with our partners at EPA, and we have 3 mobile labs that are going to be set up across the state. We have a number of river authorities who have agreed to keep their labs open. The state of Arkansas has offered to help as well. And then our larger municipalities, many of them have their own labs, private labs that they use, and they've offered to allow the surrounding communities to use those labs. And the city of Corpus Christi, at no cost, has offered that, which is really it's really great to see some of these larger municipalities step up and help out their neighbors. Right now, we have the capacity in those labs to handle the samples that are required to lift boil water notices. We ran some numbers last night, and so we feel pretty good that we're in a good place there with all the additional labs that we've brought online. I'd like to talk, I know that we've talked every day about water. I'm going to shift just for a second because we haven't had time to talk about some of the other things that we do as an agency. As you know, we monitor the air across the state of Texas, and we have a number of petrochemical industries that have shut down because of the extreme weather, and those facilities will be starting up over the course of the next week. In order to be prepared for that, we have staff already in the field. We had a number of air monitors that went down because of the cold weather. They didn't have power. We have staff in the field getting those up and going now. We have staff in the field doing handheld monitoring. Our goal through the startup of these large facilities all along the Gulf Coast is that we will have data from before, during, and after the startup of those facilities. So we have staff in the field doing that right now as we speak. We also handle waste in the state of Texas, and I think a lot of homeowners, probably cities, organizations, businesses, a lot of folks are probably going to be asking questions about waste. What do I do with all the waste? In some ways, we're seeing some parallels between what we're experiencing here and hurricanes, and as you know, we're used to dealing with hurricanes. We're not necessarily used to dealing with blizzards. And so what do you do with your drywall if you had a pipe break? What do you do with your carpet if it's been soaked because you had a pipe rupture? We have all of that available on our website, guidance documents about what you can do and how you separate that. It's at tceq.texas.gov, and if you have questions, you can go there. We have an incident page that you can follow, and we have everything there that you need. With that, Chief, that concludes my update, and I'm happy to take questions.
Great. So thank you all, and again, we'll stay here with you as long as you want. And for a little bit of order, if you don't mind, if we can just start and we'll work our way back and forth going through questions. Y'all okay with that? Good for you? Fox News, ma'am, any questions? You want to start and we'll work our way down the list? Okay. All right. Wes?
Thanks, Chief. I want to ask about adding more counties to the disaster declaration. Is there any effort at the state level to try and get more Texas counties added? Some areas were impacted in different ways, not necessarily the same way, and so I'm wondering what the status of those other counties is.
Yeah, Wes, thank you for opening that up so we can explain that. I think everybody's aware that Governor Abbott asked for a major disaster declaration for all 254 Texas counties for both individual assistance and public assistance. And I want to take a little bit of time to try to explain the difference between the two, what the White House granted us, and then what we will continue to do to get closer to what Governor Abbott asked for. And so first, individual assistance is FEMA funds that go straight to homeowners and renters. And there's a cap on those funds. Right now, the cap is $36,000 for IA and then another $36,000 for other needs assistance. We refer to that as ONA. Now, the people in the 77 counties that were declared will need to start registering with FEMA, and as you know, early this morning, over 1,700 had already successfully registered. We believe that number will continue to grow. And we want those in those 77 counties to upload their information and report to FEMA as fast as possible. I also want to take a point to show you the QR code behind us, and we'll make sure you get that link. That is a system that we've developed in-house here at TDIM, so kind of like your auto insurance is right now, where you can take a picture of your claim and send it in. We've built this system so that homeowners and renters across Texas can report to us their damages so that we can much faster report that information back up to FEMA. We do want all 254 counties added. I think also if you look at the other screen there to the right, you'll see the cold temperatures and then the hours of time we were below freezing. Most Texans do not winterize their homes. It would be counterproductive into the hot months that we have. And so we know that there are a lot of broken pipes out there, and using this QR code and the system that we have, that will help us track that information and more accurately report that information. On the public assistance side, the governor asked for all categories of public assistance. What was granted was Category B, the emergency protective measures. What we will have to do now in order to get to full all 7 categories is actually do damage assessments with all 254 counties to show the amount of debris that has or will be generated, to show damage to infrastructure, to water, to electrical systems, to roads, to schools, to government buildings, to all of the utilities that are out there and parklands. We will have to show county by county, dollar by dollar, to show that each county exceeds its thresholds. Now, in my opinion, I don't think we will have a county that does not exceed its threshold. But the decision from our federal partners was to actually go through and count these county by county. My commitment to all of the Texans out there is we will do our part to make sure that we get you added on. Yes, sir.
To kind of go off that, do you know what exactly the White House, what criteria the White House went to decide which counties get the individual assistance? And I guess what steps is the state taking right now to educate folks in these areas that have the individual assistance to give them the education to apply for it and all that type of stuff?
Yes, sir. It's not, the criteria that is used is written in code. It's 44 CFR. So you can go through there and see what they normally look at. The actual data sets that FEMA and the White House use to make this declaration at this point, we're not aware of. They generally, as a rule, don't share that level of detail with us. But again, they're committed to helping us go through the process for the other 177 counties to make sure that we get those added on. And I didn't hear the second part of your question.
I guess what steps does the state need to take right now to educate folks in the counties that are approved for individual assistance to go ahead and apply for, like how they need to apply for it?
And so there is the number that FEMA put out on their website, disasterassistance.gov is the website they can go to. There's an 800 number that we'll share with you that they can call and register. And then for those that were not in one of those 77 counties, I need your help getting this QR code out so they can start filling out that data. Go ahead, Wes.
I'll go back around. From a timeline perspective, I'm talking about getting a request for water or a blanket or a generator, probably not a blanket, but what is the timeline for when someone submits the request for that supply, like water, to getting it into the hands of the person who needs it?
Yeah, that's an important question, but there's no consistent answer to it. And the reason is because the geographic expanse of our state, coming from one location and then road conditions. I mean, ideally, we would have it there within minutes to hours. I don't think that's the norm. And this is something that I hope that we take as a lesson learned from this as we start getting our way out of this, is we do think there need to be more locations across the state at the local level and the state level of where resources are staged or stored before the event. I mean, bluntly, we have very limited supply at the local government level of cities that just have warehouses full of bottled water that are owned by the city, or that have meals ready to eat that are owned by the local government. They usually don't exist. We rely on the private sector for our everyday needs. We had a small amount, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, of water that we had already had moved out across the state because of supporting COVID missions, and we distributed that water as fast and safe as we could. Again, working with our federal partners who do keep the stockpile of water and MREs, which frankly is a challenge to keep it fresh and not have it go stale. Right? The water does go bad. The MREs do have a shelf life to them. So that constant turning is a challenge that we will continue to face going forward. We just all, as a local government and state and as a nation, are going to have to get a lot better. It's no different, Wes, than when we saw the pandemic hit and the Strategic National Stockpile had expired PPE in it. I mean, we as a nation have got to get better at doing this, and it's got to start at the local level. Yes, sir.
How are you ensuring communities hit hardest by some of these water outages are going to be prioritized in getting this water distribution?
So we are working filling as many gaps as we can right now, and really it's hard to find a part of the state that's not impacted by a water distribution system. And so we're moving, we flew water yesterday and the day before yesterday because the roads were still too iced up. So it might not have been then a point of, were they the ones that were most in need of water, or were they the ones that I could get water to first? And again, we'll be at the point of over 3 million bottles distributed by the end of the day today, with many more coming. I mean, I drove around a little bit today. Grocery stores are packed. Drive-through fast food lines are packed. I mean, so the supply chain is full. It's going to continue to improve, and we will continue to support all the bottled water needs that we can get our hands on. Yes, ma'am.
Water. Can you kind of walk us through what that looks like, how long it will take, and then you also said that 64 of the boil water orders have been rescinded, and if you could remind me how many are left.
Right. So I'll start with the labs. So when a boil water notice gets put into place, there's several reasons for that. So if a pipe breaks and it causes a drop in the pressure, you have to think about those systems are usually closed to the air, closed to the dirt. Pipe breaks, that stuff gets into the system and can contaminate it. Or if there's a lack of power and they lose pressure, what happens there is that the water actually will flow backwards into the system. And so you may have stuff that's in the pressure inside the system keeps it safe because it pushes, I guess, kind of the bad stuff to the ends of it. But a simple explanation would be something like a front yard sprinkler system. So the pressure drops, a backflow prevention device fails, and then that water that might be sitting in there flows back into the drinking water system, which can cause all sorts of issues. So what you have to do is you have to then flush the system, make sure that the integrity is good, but then you have to test the system, and you have to test it for bacteria, and that's where the labs come in. It takes about 24 hours to run those samples because you have to grow cultures, and then you have to sort of see what the water looks like at the end of that before you can clear the actual system. So once they get to a point where it's testing, you've got about a 24-hour window at that point. So that's why the labs are so crucial in this chain of getting those boil water notices lifted as soon as possible. So we have 64 that are out, but we still have about 1,400, a little bit more, 1,445 that are still being impacted in some form or fashion with, it looks like, 1,318 that still have a boil water notice in place at this. That's correct. And remember, so we have about 7,000 public water systems in the state of Texas, but as I said earlier, the interesting thing is that a public water system only has to have 15 connections. So in some places with Texas, very rural, we're talking about pretty small water systems. We're not necessarily talking about something as sophisticated as a Houston or, Fort Worth or Austin or San Antonio. And so that's really where our phone bank comes in, is to really try to find connections for, those systems if they need the assistance to get to those labs.
Sorry, and so can you say how many labs are working to do this?
Over the course of the weekend, I think that we have at least 79 that are going to be working throughout the weekend, so they're open right now. And then we'll have at least 92 that are qualified to run. The challenge is the weather created issues for the labs, too. just like I think it created issues for everyone trying to get to where they needed to be. But right now, the capacity that we have with the labs, based on our calculations, would say that we have enough space to be able to run the samples that we need to as they come in. Yeah, so I think that I want to take one step back and look at this for a second from just a historical perspective. We've never seen a weather event, a winter weather event like this in the state of Texas in recorded history that I'm aware of. So our systems, water systems, are really built for heat, sort of to the chief's point about homes being winterized here. We saw multiple sort of failure points. So, for example, a water system may have power that runs it, and then they're required to have backup power. But when the primary power provider doesn't have power, but then the backup power provider also doesn't have power, that's an issue. The generators are maybe heat generators, so built to run in the middle of the summer when it's really hot outside, not necessarily built to run when you have 5 to 7 days of extremely cold temperatures. And so this has been a huge learning experience. We didn't have these issues. I'm not aware of ever having issues of this magnitude from a water system standpoint in the history of the state. So we are not going to let this event, we're going to take full advantage of this event to learn. We're going to do a full review of all of the regulations that we have in place. You know, these water systems operate under a mix of federal and state regulations, and we're going to do a full review of those regulations to see where it makes sense to maybe harden that infrastructure a little bit. In some cases, it's just hard. So, for example, some cities, those pipes maybe aren't buried deep enough, you know, and so that's why you see all the water main breaks, and that's just a function of we're not the Northeast. We're not Minnesota. And so, but we are going to be taking a hard look at all of those regulations to see where it makes sense to harden that infrastructure. So if this happens again in our lifetime, we will be prepared for it.
Follow up on that. I know right now the focus right now is recovery, but at what point do you start kind of that process of kind of reviewing what went wrong and how to fix it in the future? What point do you start that?
We already have that. We're already starting that list right now. You know, so as we're doing our, you know, I've got 2 daily briefings a day with my staff. As we do that, we put down markers and sort of say, that's a marker, put it down. We're going to come back to that and make that part of this review process. And so this will be an ongoing process. It's not going to be quick. You know, it is going to involve the local municipalities, especially our large and our rural water providers, because they're the ones running these systems. And so we need to have them at the table too to say, hey, what worked, what didn't work, where could we get this, where could we do this better? And so I think as I envision it going forward, some sort of task force with us, local municipalities, rural water providers, where we all sit down and say, what makes sense and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again?
Chief, quick question for you about alerting capability. Does TDEM or the state as a whole have a way to blast out notification alerts or any kind of disaster alert to Texans, or would you rather leave that to the individual entities, the local leaders?
Yep. So the first part of the answer to the question is we have access to emergency notification systems. And I want to pause there. I'll tell you several times, just last legislative session, House Bill 34 and Senate Bill 2352 were titled Statewide Disaster Alert Systems. They never made it to the governor's desk. The reason for that, Wes, is all disasters are local. That's our national mantra. That's how we plan, that's how we train, that's how we exercise. And every time that one of these bills comes forward, the local governments realize and the citizens realize information is best shared by those closest to the problem. And so what we don't want is me sitting here in Austin being the person responsible for alerting Amarillo and El Paso and Brownsville and Beaumont, because their local elected officials are much closer to the problem and have much better information than we do. I can tell you, every one of the 254 counties and every one of the 1,216 cities is covered by multiple reverse 911, code red, Everbridge, you name the name, of emergency reverse alerting system. They're done at the utility level, they're done at the local government level, they're done at the school district level, and many of us got messages like that from our utility providers and our local governments. The emergency alert system was designed for use by the president back in the, excuse me, the 80s when it was designed. So the thing about communication and about alerting the public, it does need to be at the level that is closest to the problem. And remember also under state law, a mayor and a county judge are the only ones that can mandate an evacuation. The idea by having it that those people closest to whatever the problem is make the decision means usually a better decision is made. And that coordination amongst those entities is key. And so are there systems in place? Yes. Did every local government take advantage of or use those systems? No. Yes, ma'am. I will get an actual readout of that for you. Seth will give you that. But right now, I believe Florida is sending in an incident management team to help. I've had calls from California, Idaho, all of our surrounding states. I mean, we go and help them during disaster. They want to come and help us. One of the challenges in getting him here earlier has been the weather, as we've been impacted by it. But I do know that we'll see out-of-state responders coming here within this week to be able to help us out. But we'll get you the list of those states. Hey.
Personnel standpoint, how has the weather impacted the COVID mission? I mean, I understand that most of some aspects of that mission, come to a halt when no one's coming out to get a vaccine or a test. But from an overall standpoint, can you touch on that a little bit?
So, as far as what the Guard is doing for the COVID mission, a lot of like our vaccine teams and all that have been stood up, they were kept in because they're in vans. Ice on a road is not good for a van, civilian vans. But the food banks, where we're supporting the food banks that could stay open, our soldiers stayed there, soldiers and airmen stayed there running the food banks, as well as on our regional support centers I mentioned. What we did was we flipped some of what they were doing and started sending water to the hospitals. So it just the roads were the thing that slowed us down, the roads and the electricity, and we're back on it as soon as we can move to where we need to be.
I guess the final thing again is please share that QR code. Help us get that message out so people can, in homes and apartments, rented or owned, help us get that message out to have them report their damages to us. And again, thank y'all for all that you're doing, helping us get this message out, and y'all be safe on the roads.